Tony Robbins was one of the. Uh, there was a period when I had moved down to LA, and I graduated from MI from a music school, and I was in a couple bands, floating around from bands and working different bartending gigs, just really floating around and having a kind of a miserable go at it. I mean, was having fun, but I was
Right.
having more
Oh
fun than
no, I
actually.
totally get it.
And I think it was my brother that recommended some Tony Robbins. This is quite a while ago, many years ago. And I think it was when Napster was around. And so I ended up like scraping some Tony Robbins recordings off of Napster. And
Oh,
just because I was like, I don't know let me just check this out. And that was my first introduction, unbeknownst to me, to neurolinguistic programming and really going inside and taking a look at what is the structure of thinking, and how you can manipulate that and change that and everything else, and states, moods, all of that.
right. Being in an optimal state and all that. Yep.
Yeah.
And now
and then of course,
you got to buy a juicer, like, because
right.
Supposed to start every morning with a big glass of celery juice.
Yes, Tony's gone through many phases. He's gone through many phases.
But we shall see. I mean, you know what? I have the opportunity to do it, so let's do it now while we're in, still in this quarantine state, and come out swinging.
For sure. I can really, I think one of the, and maybe Elise and Wendy, you can, I could check in with you. Like for me, in regards to what Mike's talking about, this has been it's been challenging in a lot of ways, obviously, but it's also been a really, really wonderful opportunity for introspection, for growth, for, doing things like Mike's doing, like, taking different courses, learning, really just kind of slowing down and doing things for myself. Now, there are times when I get caught up and I think, wait a minute, I should be doing a gazillion other things with my time. I should be writing a book. I should be creating this program or that, or, and it's interesting, like in those moments, I can feel frustrated or down on myself. But then it passes, and then I realize that I have the opportunity, and I have used this opportunity for deep reflection, and that just seems to me like that's the way it was before. Like before all of this quarantine and the virus and everything else, that's the way life worked as well. It was just different circumstances. Which is fascinating to me, because that means the circumstances are not what's dictating how I feel in any given moment. So what is? What is dictating that? And of course, I think most of you know I'm a one-trick pony in that regard. Thought is the dictator of what mood we're going to be in any given moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to me, that's fascinating, because it's a never-ending exploration into the nature of how our experience is created, in every single moment. And then there's different ways to look at that. Speaking of Tony, and of course, my whole path to just whatever this is, right? my whole path on this journey started off with this idea that, okay, I've got subconscious programming and I need to change it. right? That was sort of, I heard that and I was like, well, that makes sense. I need to change my subconscious programming. So, because I don't like what's happening now. So if I change what's happening here, I'll get different results. And that makes sense at first glance. I mean, it's kind of empowering, right? It feels good to know, okay, I just need to change the programming. And so I kind of went at that, uh, and I guess in retrospect, I still had ups and downs, right? So that never really changed. Maybe the content of the ups and downs, it's like I once heard someone say, doing this work doesn't mean you're never going to have problems. You're just going to have a higher quality of problem. Right? And so I was like, okay, I guess these are higher quality problems, but I still have problems. Right? And then I started learning about, sort of like Tony Robbins' work, and really taking a look at, okay, what if I make mental movies? What if I really take a look at the structure of my thinking and then manipulate that to get a better result? And I thought, well, that makes sense too. In fact, I would try it and I would get results, right? And so that was a long journey of kind of going in and taking a look at it. All right, how do I prepare myself? How do I get through what looks to be like a difficult experience? And so I did a lot of state changes. I would pump my chest up and I would walk tall. I would speak louder. I would, I was in a, and by the way, I'm not knocking anything here, just reflecting, on both the usefulness of these things and also what lies beyond it. Like taking a step back and looking more deeply into it. So I was, for a while, I sold insurance, believe it or not, for a while in the company, like a brokerage company. And we would have these big rah-rah meetings. And all the like top dogs in the company would come out and give these great speeches and kind of motivate you and everything else. And one of them said, so I should back up a little bit. So the whole thing with this company was, it was supposed to be a duplicatable system. Like you just follow the steps, right? And you will have success. So he wanted to have Tony Robbins at one of these big rah-rah events. And so he went to see Tony Robbins, and he was able to go backstage and hang out with him. And he said, one minute he was having a chat with him, and the next minute Tony was breakdancing on the floor and pounding his chest like a gorilla. And the CEO of the company watched Tony, and he said, well, that's not duplicatable. And that was the end of that idea of getting Tony.
That's not turnkey.
Right. Exactly. But, it reflecting on that, just telling that story, there's the whole personal development world is there's no shortage of steps and, rules and, 1, 2, 3s and keys to happiness or success or fulfillment. And again, not knocking these things, because I think they all have their value when they have their value. When I first listened to that Tony Robbins tape, it had me do something in my head that changed my emotional state. I was like, shit, that worked. That was cool. the very first time when I started using tapping, I remember almost more clearly the first time I worked with somebody and got a result. But for myself, it was more subtle, but it was still like, oh shit, that worked. Right? But it looks to me like it's fascinating to me, like, where do these, why does what works for one person one time not work for another person another time? Why is it not always duplicatable? And I think, and I'm just kind of riffing here, but it looks to me like, because, well, let me start with another story, another NLP story, actually. So a colleague of mine was at a Richard Bandler. Richard Bandler is the co-creator of NLP, which is what Tony based his whole coaching career on, especially in the beginning, neuro-linguistic programming. So he was at a Richard Bandler conference, and let's see if I can get the story right, but somebody in the audience, they were going through an exercise, and someone was like, I've got this problem with my job, and it's just consuming me, and I can't handle it. And Richard Bandler looked at this gentleman and he said, well, if you had a picture hanging in your house on your wall that you didn't like, would you keep it? And he was like, no, I wouldn't. And the whole audience was like, oh, yay. And it was like, oh, okay, so you changed the picture. But my colleague was in the audience, and it just hit him like a ton of bricks. He was like, well, yeah, but it's just a fucking picture. Like, it's just a painting. What's the big deal? Why is it so profound that you can just, why is it that you have to do anything? Right? It's our judgment of that experience that creates the discomfort. And so it looks to me like whenever we are caught up in judgment of our experience, right? We'll just call it that for now. What we need in that moment at whatever level of understanding we're at in that moment will show up for us. And that might be a Tony Robbins technique, or a Tony Robbins tape, or an inspiration to tap, or to actually go in and change a memory, or to call a practitioner, or to ask for help, or to go for a walk. It really looks to me like whatever shows up for us can be as simple as a distraction. Like, it just gets our mind off of it for that moment so that we can continue on. And it can be as profound as a deep insight. The deep insight seems to me to be the most transformational. And the deep insight is the same insight time and time again. And that is, it's just a fucking painting. In other words, as long as I'm putting my consciousness and awareness on this thing that is giving me pain, And by thing, I'm not saying I'm doing this, but I'm not talking about out there, right? I'm talking about the internal process. I'm talking about thought. As long as we continue to believe that what we are focused on needs tinkering with, we continue to give it more weight than it deserves. Now, it's really, there's a gray line of understanding there, because it really looks like, well, yeah, but there's something happening in the world. There's something happening that I need to take care of. And yeah, there's things every day, all day, that we need to handle and take care of. But our experience of them has nothing to do with the actual thing that we need to take care of. And it has everything to do with our internal process, our thoughts. Now, to me, it's a lot of things, but it can be very freeing. You know, it's like, oh, you mean I don't have to keep feeling this anxiety, or keep feeling this pain, or keep feeling this. And at other times, it's just hopeful. So my mind now is going to sort of the next phase of my evolution, again, going to whatever this is that I do. The next phase was tapping, and was all about changing memories. And the idea was, okay, if you want to have a happy life, then you need to go and change all your memories, which of course is another flavor of change your subconscious programming. And with that again, that seemed to make a lot of sense. Like, it just makes a lot of sense on paper. Like, okay, yeah, I've got stuff, junk in here that I need to change. And then once I change it, my life will be great. The challenge was years and years and years of changing memories. Life still was doing this. And so there was an added frustration that underlined it all. How can I be doing all of this work and still have, you know, life's ups and downs, essentially, right? In fact, I remember I'll share that story or save that one for later, but I was reflecting on this whole thing a moment ago. You know, it's like, or yesterday, if I have to go in and change all my memories before I can be happy, well, that raises some questions. Number one, how do I know which memories to change? How do I go about finding these memories? How do I know when the memories are fully changed? How do I know I found the right memories? What if I can't find any memories? And so we find ways to, to sort of adjust for this, right? So, well, if you can't find any memories, make them up. How do I know when the memory's changed? Well, if you think of it and you feel better, then it's changed. Okay. But is that the same memory? Like, how do you, in other words, it begins, the more we try to tinker with this stuff, the more convoluted and confusing it becomes, right? And then I began reflecting on a presupposition that I operate from, which is there are no broken people. Right? So you're not broken. You're just operating off of old broken ideas and programs, right? That was the presupposition I worked from. And again, that made a lot of sense. But then it occurred to me, well, if I'm not broken, why am I tinkering so much? Why am I trying to maneuver these parts? Why am I trying to fix these parts? And then the other presupposition was memories aren't real. They're all made up, right? So the experiences, we're not saying the experiences weren't real, but once the experience is past, we just recreate it, right? And sometimes it feels very permanent because it can have a lot of emotion with it. And so every time we go back and we recreate it, it can be as if we're re-experiencing it again and again. Now, of course, memories are extremely useful. They help us navigate and sort of, get our bearings, obviously. But when we have memories that bother us or traumatic memories, and we revisit them again and again and again, each time we do that, we're just making stuff up, right? It's created, it's thought created. So if I am to go and change all these memories, but these memories are not real, why am I spending so much time trying to change them? They're not real. So rather than, and on top of that, going and looking for memories to change means I'm actually going and making up more and more material for me to work with, right? In fact, in a way, I'm convoluting the issue, once again, complicating the issue. And oftentimes that can lead to spending more time bouncing around up here and less time actually being present, being more connected with life and with those around you. So rather than looking for more things to make up so that we can have a problem to solve, why not? It looks to me that a better use of our time, and this is something that you can reflect on your own, but a better use of our time might be to reflect on how it is all made up. Not how, but, well, I guess sort of how, but just the fact that it's made up. I had someone say to me once, Alan, it's not your thinking that's the problem. It's that it's thinking. Like it's not your thoughts that are the problem. It's that it is thought. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but because what happens is we misattribute. Let's put it this way. If I am not happy with my current circumstance, let's say that I look at my bank balance and it's not where I want it to be, and I feel bad, and I go, God, I'm so tired of this, right? And I have a habit of looking at my bank balance and going, this sucks. I want more in there. It's not good enough. Da, 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 right? So if I think those feelings are coming from my bank balance, or the fact that or the fact that I keep feeling this every time I look at it, and if I think it's coming from that, then and then someone tells me, well, you've got money programs. Oh, okay. So I got to go searching for all these money programs. And now it is true, we have conditioned thinking around stuff. We have ways of thinking around stuff. But rather than going and searching for my money programs, why don't I just start with, oh, I thought my bank balance was making me feel this way. But it's not my bank balance making me feel this way. Nothing outside of me makes me feel anything. Thought is the generator of my feelings. Feelings are a reflection of what thoughts are going through my awareness in that moment. Now, if I start there, well, then I can examine, oh, okay, gosh, I thought my bank balance was making me feel this way. In fact, I thought money was making me feel this way, or lack of it, or not having enough, or not being good enough to make a certain amount of money, right? Now, this is all thought generated. When we begin to see that what we're feeling is not a result of something deep in the chasms of our unconscious, it's in fact a reflection of what we're thinking right then and there in real time. Because that's all we have is right then and there. We can never think in the past. We can never think in the future. It may certainly look that way, but that's the misunderstanding, right? We're always experiencing the moment, but sometimes we're distracted by thought and feeling. To the extent that we can see that and just reflect on that, can do something for us. It can give something. It can give us an awareness where we just begin to see through that misunderstanding. So another story comes to mind, and I've shared it before, but I remember once I was giving a talk. I was giving a talk in front of a small group, and it was on this topic. And there was a gentleman kind of in the front row, and he raised his hand. He was like, and I was like, oh, and it kind of took me back. And he had this look on his face, and it just looked aggressive to me. And he started asking a question, and I didn't hear the question. All I heard was my thoughts and feelings, like, oh, Jesus, who is this guy? Like, why is he attacking me? And then, oh, maybe he doesn't value me, or he doesn't, like, all of these thoughts. Yes, many of them conditioned in me, right? From who knows when, right? From childhood experiences, yada, yada. But in that moment, I wasn't connected to him. I was caught up with what was going on here. Now, also in that moment, I woke up to what was going on. I woke up to the fact that I was being distracted by old conditioned ideas, and the look on his face just triggered something in me, and I went into thought. I got totally caught up in it until I didn't. Until I realized the mechanism at play. Right? And it's always the same mechanism. In that moment, I saw what was happening. And I said, oh, wow. I'm just, like, I thought these feelings were coming from him, and the look on his face and his aggressiveness. So in that moment, I saw that it was not coming from him. It was in fact me. And in that moment, I saw it was as if I saw down all the way into my past, all the times that I had reacted from that triggered place in the past, all the times I had been tricked before. And I realized, holy shit, this is a long-standing, conditioned response. And when I saw that, it just dropped. It just dropped away. And it occurred to me, maybe you should just listen to what this guy has to say. And as I did, I connected, I heard the question, like behind the question. Like I heard and I saw that this guy he was a little aggravated, but not at me. He was aggravated because he was confused. He was starting to see something, and it was rubbing against his old programming.
It's lunchtime. Make sure
It's
to
lunchtime.
drink water.
Thank you, Alexa. I gotta remember to turn that on. So he was wrestling with his attempt to, like, he was seeing something, but because it wasn't clear, because it was rubbing against his old conditioned thinking, it was frustrating. And so I saw him from that perspective. I saw him from a very human perspective. And I heard his question, and I was able to connect and answer his question in a much more deep way. Now, to just juxtaposition that, what I might have done in the past is react from my own trigger. And so I would get confrontational, or I would not hit the mark in my response to him. And of course, that would just create more of this, wouldn't it? And that sums up basically every argument or confrontation. It's the reason we have wars, for crying out loud. Right? Right? My God is the best. What? How dare you? No, my God is the best. Right? When in reality, they have the same God. And in fact, even their core of their religious writings, there's more in common than there is not, right? Yet, because we get triggered, we, rather than seeing through that, we react from it, right? Did you raise your hand, Elise?
Yeah, I did.
Mm.
Is it okay for me to say something here?
Of course.
Bear with me here. I'm in the middle of testing out to level 4 at the moment. And this has been, as you well know, better than any previous of my practitioners, that, it's been a 5+ year journey for me. And you were the first level 4 that I worked with. So what's been occurring to me many times, and just tuning into you on and off over these last couple of years, in terms of what you're sharing in this moment. I guess where I'm at about it is, NLP and fast EFT for that matter. Not saying anything about a person, a place, a thing, except to say that they're all tools. Mm-hmm. To me, it boils down to all of it is tools. And those tools, for some people, staying at a certain place of thinking about it is right for them. And for others of us, it can feel a little bit like mind or consciousness 101, So for for some of us, it's a step along the way of realizing some of the things that you were saying, or we were exposed to things about here now and the nature of consciousness and the mind, a very long time ago. But I think that's what I gather from my journey with it is it's pretty anticlimactic at this particular moment. I have one more piece and I'm just doing it because I need to make that completion for myself. I mean, it's excruciating for me to have to memorize stuff. It's just not where I'm at. But I felt like I've come this far. I have something to learn by facing the fear, getting in front of a camera, and letting somebody sit over my shoulder. At least it's Ilka Oster, who's wonderful. And she will be over my shoulder on Monday, and I'll walk through that gate one way or the other. So, yeah, I think as long as I recognize that, there is a moment, there is a place for, I'll put it this way, I went, this doesn't say anything about me, just take it at face value. I was part of a school that came out of California that was meant to teach people how to get in touch with their intuition and give psychic readings. And I went because my friends were saying to me, how when it's time to change and something keeps happening like over and over again in a very short period of time, and you go, huh? You get your attention. So I was freaking out. My boyfriend, my best girlfriend, and a few other people in my life, because they were looking at me and going, how do you know that? For me, I didn't know I was doing anything. I actually went to this school to learn how to shut it down. And they were not astute enough to teach me how to just use what I had never shut down and use it in a proper way. But long story short, I came out of there feeling like, this isn't something to use with the average person on a normal daily basis. And if anybody has this as their profession that's listening, this is not meant as an insult. It's just my personal journey with it all, is that my feeling is to go and read somebody doesn't have the same value as that person finding out for themselves. And to me, that particular journey is a very valuable use of fast EFT or NLP, is in being the person who is the helpful facilitator for somebody's journey of finding out more about themselves. Okay. And to go further than that can sound very, very philosophical at any one moment in time, unless it's out of context, like a situation like sitting here with you right now and listening to it from another person that way. Otherwise, it's just living it. And therefore, they say people that know don't say, right? Because most of the people that get this don't, maybe one, they don't have the ability, maybe two, they don't have the desire anymore, and maybe for three, it's not their path.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I see value in it all, and we're in an age where it's not the gurus, and I really appreciate people such as yourself who are willing to be with it in a riffing kind of a way, and and put out something that for some people, is like this whole revelation. And until all of us are living that way, it's no matter how much we mentally know about it, beyond the mind, what there's that gut knowing, as they say, or just, we know what we know. And it's that working out that difference between that philosophical ruminating on something and how does this apply to one's individual life that makes what for some people is a guru or for other people is a practitioner or a counselor or a coach of some kind a good thing. And that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I had so much stuff whirling through my head as you were talking. It's great. So with just what's coming to me is well first off, there are times when I don't see this for shit. In fact, I spent 3/4 of my waking hours yesterday
Right.
not seeing it, and then something just occurred to me. It's like, oh, if you want to keep feeling miserable, you can, or you can just remember how this works.
Right, and it's the remember word, and that's why Ram Dass talked about remember being here now, and also the song, what's been made into a song, which was a poetry of sorts of Rumi. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, come even if you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again, for ours is not a caravan of despair. He's saying it all right there, it's always a process of, we always forget and we always come back, and in that same tradition, there's 99 names of God, just like in Judaism, there is no name of God. Calling it Yahweh or any of those names, that's not the name of God. Those are attributes, those are qualities. And Arabic has the same thing, and so in Sufism, they have one that I love, and it is a word that means in English, thank you for forgiving me for what I have done, what I am doing, and what I will do. Now, this isn't going on the word forgiveness. This is going on the idea, again, of forgetting that. I like that about Islam. I'm not Islamic and I'm not a Sufi, but I like it that even men, stick their butts up in the air and their head to the ground and humble themselves to the fact that at least 5 times a day they have determined that for the rest of their life they're going to remember that they forgot in between.
I love it.
That's all I have to say.
Yeah. And the other thing that occurred to me too is like, part of the fun of all of this is, just going on this journey and falling into in and out of seeing it, and in regards to doing this work, however you choose to serve, one of my mentors said something that resonated with me that I've always kind of tried to fall back into. He said, I create the conditions for, my intention is to create the conditions for my client to have the insights and the realizations that will help them. And that I just got chills there. But that really spoke to me and resonated with me. And so whether I am, doing tapping, or whether you're an EFT practitioner or a faster EFT tapping practitioner, or an NLP practitioner, or a life coach, or a business coach, doesn't matter. Like, if you make it your priority to create the conditions for your client to have their own insights, you know, that to me, and sometimes we stumble into that without realizing it. So here's, I'll say, rather than generalize, I'll say me. I'll use myself as an example again. I used to stumble into that, and then my ego would take all the credit, right? So I would, you know, be very present, and I'd be working with somebody, and the client would have insights, and they would wake up and they would say, "Oh my gosh, like, you know, why was this even a problem?" Right? And then I would go, "Gosh, I'm so good. That was all me. I did all of that." No, right? It wasn't some ninja trick that I did. It was really just being present and being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, in that case,
And
I'm always thanking my client for the privilege of being there to watch them at that moment when they made that change.
yeah,
Because
and there is,
my job is to empower them, you know, otherwise I have no business being there, I don't feel. You know, if I'm there to get, you know, kudos for myself, I'm in the wrong place.
exactly. And speaking from experience, if we try to hang our hat on that, like if we're doing this because we want to feel important, we'll have a short career.
Yeah.
You know?
Alan, can I say something?
Yes, Winnie.
You know, I was just thinking, I think for me, the thing that helps keep me in that place, and we do go in and out of that place, but when I can connect my heart and my mind together, it seems like there's just a feeling that comes over me that keeps me present for a little bit longer. And I have found that when I put my hand on my heart and just being thankful that for that presence in me, it gives me, right now, like you, I'm getting chills, and it gives me that feeling and that insight for quite a while during the day. And just doing that, there is something so powerful about that, because connecting our hearts with our minds, I think, is what will keep us more in rapport with ourselves and with the people that we're working with.
I love that. I love that it occurs to you like that. And I agree. I think that what we're talking about here, there's really are no words to describe it. I've said that before, right? But I do like that image of sort of the heart and the mind coming into alignment.
When we do, it's pure love, and it gets the ego out of the way, because we all have had those times where we thought, well, I'm cool, I've done that.
That's
And
exactly it.
yeah. And but when we're able to look at people and they say, well, I did it this way, and you can say, you know what? There's as many ways of doing it as there are people. You're an individual, and you're a beautiful individual. And if that works for you, that is wonderful. And sometimes our job is to teach people how to get there. But if they have something, a unique way, or that they've done it, how wonderful is it that they have come up with that experience? Because when it's yours, there's something so healing about it that you're never the same afterwards, ever.
Yeah.
Well said, Winnie.
Yeah.
And just so we have a word for it, I call it upside down thinking.
Oh.
For me, if
Is that what you said, Mike?
upside down thinking, if my thoughts, if I'm having thoughts, and my thoughts are creating an internal state that is not one that I would care to remain in, then it's, you know, I call that upside down thinking. My quickest defense mechanism for that upside down thinking are two things. It's one is gratitude for everything else that I have in my life that is wonderful. So as soon as I start having gratitude, that upside down thinking, you know, starts to fade a little. And the other one is just having forgiveness on the tip of my tongue. You know, if I and I don't forgive people for their benefit. I do it for my own. And those two things seem to help me get out of that upside down thinking.
I love it. You know what's interesting is what goes on between having the negative, I'll call it negative experience, and the insight to shift your focus and to turn your awareness to gratitude, or to turn your awareness to forgiveness. You know, that's what fascinates me. Is and I think that's what we're really pointing to in this conversation, is there's something that has you go, oh, wait a minute. My thinking is just going upside down, right? It's not my circumstances. And there's beautiful ownership in that. And to extend a little bit further, it also means that we're always in alignment. Like we're always, or I should say that alignment is always there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the illusion of it not being there. The experience of it not being there is us being caught up in upside down thinking, us being caught up in the illusion of thought. And so to know that it's always an illusion,
Yeah.
that's powerful, right?
And it's also good to remember everyone else that you're interacting with has their own illusion going on as well.
That's huge. And speaking to Winnie and Elise, who work well, and I mean, this is universal, right? It doesn't have to be a client on client. It's like in a business meeting, on a phone call, working with a business client. It works the same way, right? If they are caught up in something, you know, we can do the dance with them, but if we want to really communicate, it's very helpful to remember that they are up against the same thing. You know, when I do work with clients, that's the number one thing I fall back into is, okay, they're not broken. They're just preoccupied. They're preoccupied with their upside down thinking. It looks very real to them. And the more real they think it is, the more preoccupied they get with it. So knowing that that's what we're all up against is, yeah, like you said, Mike, it's empowering.
I just wanted to say something about this NLP thing. I agree with everything everybody's been sharing. This is such a wonderful conversation. And just bring it back to NLP and what's going on in the world, or being a practitioner of anything and what's going on in the world. And one of the values that I feel like we can help people to recall is being able to let go of position, mental stuck position. And that requires of us to recognize, to put it a different way, our mental stuck position if we're triggered by our client, if we're triggered by the person who's saying something in front of us, it's so easy, especially these days, you know, or any time in life, you know, to get those kind of triggers going. And in NLP, I only took a remote class once with Tony Robbins. So there was a teacher in the room and Tony Robbins remote. And he had us go through a few exercises which were fabulously entertaining and instructive. And one of those exercises was to have one partner and go through a list of like 70 or 80 submodalities. you know, and find out. I wish I had that list. It was great. And that was instructed to find out how this person was doing their mind. And yeah, there's the larger umbrellas of, you know, the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, and then there's all the subtleties of all that. Mm-hmm. And for me, a discovery of finding out that when somebody, you know, said it's behind me, well, yeah, but how far behind you? Because, like, is it like attached to your back still? Or is it way the heck back there so far that it's not bothering you anymore? Or when they say, you know, it's in their face, you know, they're usually being pretty accurate in terms of where they've got it in space even. And so I found mm-hmm. these things utterly fascinating, but I was already a person looking at the fascination of people's differences. And here's where I apply it to the world, is that for me, when the guy that's in Washington got in office, I was devastated for a couple of days and like this, and blah, 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 you know, but I also had going on and continue to keep coming back to what about this is my inner Trump. There's a dear friend of mine who's you could say very, you know, much on his path spiritually, talking to from Europe yesterday, and there's so much going around that is all about making fun of and being happy for the eventual demise of this human being. And I'm not in the same place. I'm devastated by a lot of what he says, by what he does. It still affects me very deeply. I'm not beyond that. And at the same time, I'm not wishing for something bad to occur to that particular human being. And I just apply that across the board to everybody's everything that I think that I'm separate from, that I can easily vilify in my life. Because this whole thing of division and otherness, I think, is what's got the world to the point that of this kind of behavior to begin with. It's just, I think we forget, it's just a bunch of individuals and their own consciousness and the way that that's all playing on each other.
Yeah. And then if you're like me, it's difficult not to get triggered by that. You know, that it is
right.
Just separation, the illusion of separation, and the continued wedge being driven. And yeah, wonderful reflections. It was wonderful discussion, you guys. I really, really appreciate everybody's input. And yeah, just very happy to spend this hour with you guys.
Thank you, Alan. You're great.
So are you.
Appreciate you.
So are you, Annie. So are you, Mike. So are you, Jim. So are you, Elise. It's great to have you all here. So this was recorded. I'll make sure I post it at the usual place and send out the email for you guys. All right.
Thank you, Alan.
My
Bye,
pleasure.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Hey, have a fantastic weekend, everyone.
You too.
You too, buddy.